Hello everyone, my name is Dagget. This is Dagget Designs and welcome back to a brand new video. Here on Dagget Designs, I teach people how to draw and illustrate classic tattoo designs as well as how to paint them. Now in today's video, I'm going to be painting this Tibetan skull tattoo flash that I drew recently, and we're going to be talking a little bit about what kind of tattoo art supplies you're going to need to get started if you want to paint tattoo flash. Now, learning how to paint tattoo flash can seem intimidating at first. There is so much fantastic flash out there, and one of the most common questions I get is, what supplies do I need? What kind of brushes are you using? What kind of inks or paints are you using? And what should I be using to get started in painting tattoo flash? So that is going to be the topic for today's discussion. Now, in the beginning, I do believe that it's not as important to have the best supplies to be able to put out good looking tattoo flash. I really do believe that comes down to the skill of the artists themselves. And you can really create some fantastic, beautiful tattoo flash using the most basic budget supplies. And then once you're comfortable with your skill set and you feel like you want to invest a little bit more into your craft, you can start investing in some more expensive supplies. Now, that having been said, we're going to start off by talking about sketching mediums. This is the first sort of thing you're going to need to look at to start drawing designs, start putting designs together before you even think about painting, lining, all of those other things. So we're going to start off by talking about sketching mediums. Now, the first thing to talk about is sketch paper. What kind of sketch paper you should use. And to be completely honest with you, there's a whole load of different types of sketch paper, and it's really down to your preference. I personally use a variety of different things when I draw tattoo flash, but typically speaking, I'll just use whatever paper's handy. The sketch paper's not super important. This is where you do your rough work before you go ahead and line your artwork, so it really doesn't matter what kind of sketch paper you use. You can go ahead and purchase legitimate sketching paper, or you can use tracing paper, which I like to use because I can layer my designs. And that becomes really handy when you want to start doing things that are more intricate, maybe something with pattern work. You can start to use tracing paper to layer your designs, and that's going to make things really easier down the track. But in the beginning, feel free to use whatever paper you'd like. Sometimes I just use printer paper to sketch my designs if that's what I've got available, but pretty much any cheap paper is going to do. Alright, the second thing we're going to talk about is sketching pencils. What kind of pencils you should use. Most people like to sketch in pencil, including myself, and I think that's a really great place to start because you can erase pencils, you can really get away with a lot, and they are more of a sketching medium before you do your clean line work. So what sort of pencils should you use to paint your tattoo flash? Well, to be completely honest with you, I currently just draw with a standard HB pencil. The pro of this is that it's extremely affordable and it's a little bit softer, and so you can sort of shade with it and you can get a little bit of a gradient of values with it. So I find this really helpful when I am sketching designs. However, I have used various mechanical pencils in the past and they are great as well. The advantage of using a mechanical pencil is that you get a consistent point all the time. It doesn't change in its thickness, so you always have a consistent point, and you don't need to sharpen it. You just sort of click the back of the mechanical pencil and you always have the same thickness. Now, that was sort of the positive side of using a mechanical pencil, but what I don't particularly like about it is sometimes I want a thicker line, and with a standard pencil, like a wooden pencil, I can lie the pencil down on its side slightly and I can achieve various effects just using that wooden pencil, which are going to translate across when I want to line my artwork. Whereas when using a mechanical pencil, all of your lines are going to be the exact same thickness, and they're all going to be very, very thin. Now, if this is what you're after, if you want that precision, a mechanical pencil is going to be the way to go. Otherwise, I find a standard HB pencil to be super affordable, everyone's familiar with it, and it's really comfortable and easy to draw with. Now, the other thing that I should point out here is that some people like to sketch in colored pencils. This is a really valuable idea. I don't do it all the time. I tend to do it when I'm layering things on the same page. So just like if you were using Procreate to draw your designs, you may start sketching in black, and then you might start sketching in red over the top of it, and this is a good way to keep some separation between your different design elements. The same thing can be done on paper. So if you're sketching in a blue pencil, you can then start sketching with a red pencil and layering things on top of each other. This is going to give you a really clear picture of your layers, even when you're working on paper. Now, a really clear example of this can be seen in last week's video where I showed you guys how to draw Japanese snake scales using a few different colored pencils for clarity's sake. This is a really good way to do it in the beginning because it creates a lot of clarity in your artwork as you're sketching, and this way you don't get things mixed up and you know where everything is supposed to sit because things are layered correctly. Now, I'm going to leave a link in the description to that video in case you missed it. That way you can go ahead and watch it and see exactly what I'm talking about. Now, before I continue talking about the various supplies you're going to need for painting Tattoo Flash, I just want to say if you are enjoying this video and if you like the content that I make, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. That way the YouTube algorithm knows to recommend this to other people that might enjoy my content. Now, the next one's a quick one. I really think you guys should invest in getting a light pad or a light box. This way you can trace your design to the hot press watercolor paper. There are some workarounds. You can tape your sketch to the back of your hot press paper and tape that to a window that's being lit by the sunlight and trace through there. But it does mean you're going to be tracing while standing up and your arms will get tired. It's also quite difficult to get smooth, consistent lines in that way. The way that I started out was by putting my design onto a glass table and lighting a very bright torch underneath the table. This was able to shine my sketch through my watercolor paper and I could work through that way. But I really do recommend getting a light pad or a light box. This is going to make your life a lot easier. Now we're going to start talking about the different lining tools that you can use to line your Tattoo Flash. I like using a standard fine liner. Something relatively thick, that way I get nice bold lines, but still thin enough that I can do fine details. I know some people have asked me if they can use Sharpies to do their Tattoo Flash. That's more than okay if that's what you're comfortable with. However, that's sort of better for doing old school designs where all the lines are the same thickness and they're all relatively thick. I like to do stuff that's just a little bit thinner than that because I can get a little bit more detail. I find a Sharpie to be a little bit too fat. Now, on top of this, I also like to use a brush pen. As you guys know, the brush pen allows you to get inconsistent lines. You can create varied line weights throughout your lines. This is quite common in Japanese style art, so if you are doing Japanese style Tattoo Flash, you may want to look at getting a brush pen. Alright, so in this part we're going to be talking about finishing paper. Now, finishing paper is really going to depend on what kind of medium you like to shade and color your designs with. Personally, I like to use hot press watercolor paper for its smooth, non-textured surface that allows me to get super clean lines. And, you know, it's not the greatest with acrylic inks. I'd much rather work on cold press watercolor paper for painting purposes. However, the line quality that I can get on the hot press paper is a lot smoother, and I can still get away with doing all of my shading on there. So depending on what kind of medium you're using, you may want to go for something with a bit more tooth. However, I find the hot press watercolor paper is fantastic to start with. It's going to make your lining process a lot easier, and it's compatible with both colored pencils, watercolor paints, acrylic inks, you know, Posca markers, alcohol markers like Copics. So you have a huge range of different mediums that you can work with when you're working on hot press watercolor paper. Now, this last one really comes down to personal preference. This is the finishing medium that you like to use, whether you want to shade and color using paints, acrylic inks, pencils, or markers. Look, personally, I'm going to recommend acrylic inks each and every time. That's what I use to paint my Tattoo Flash. What I love about acrylic inks is that you can layer them, which means I can do all of my black shading with my acrylic inks, and I can go straight over the top of it with all of my colors, and I can really layer things without reactivating the inks. The problem I always had with watercolors was that once you lay them down, they lift back up with water. So if you try to layer over the top of them, they lift up into the other colors, and this can get really muddy. So you need to be really deliberate with watercolors, which is okay if that's the kind of artwork that you do. But just with the style of art that I've developed and the way that I work, I like to layer my colors and I like to work in all sorts of different ways. And I found that acrylic inks work the best for this for my purposes. I do use Liquitex brand acrylic inks, but painting tattoo flash is a really personal thing, so you really need to find what makes you comfortable. If you're comfortable using colored pencils, or if you're comfortable using watercolor paints, that is completely okay. You can use whatever you'd like to shade and color your designs. But if I can recommend something, I would recommend the Liquitex acrylic inks. That's what I use to paint my tattoo flash, and that's what I like. Now, the last thing is, what kind of brushes do I use? Now, I'm not going to rant on about this. I'm going to get through this one real quick because I don't have a lot to say about it. I'm not a brush snob. I don't spend a lot of money on brushes. I use Winsor & Newton brand Taklon synthetic watercolor brushes. That's it. Number 5 and a number 6, and occasionally a number 8 for doing large areas of shading. I don't have a lot else to say about it. They're the brushes that I use. And that is it, guys. That is a list of the supplies that I would recommend to you if you are looking to start painting tattoo flash or painting tattoo designs and you've just got no idea where to start. These are the supplies that I use and the supplies that I recommend. Now, if you did like today's video, please give this video a thumbs up. That way the algorithm knows to recommend this video to other people that might enjoy my content. And leave me a comment in the comment section down below if you have any questions regarding my art, my process, how I paint. That way I can cover that in a future video and we can keep the videos coming. Alright guys, I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.